Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. Have you thought about starting a business? Maybe it's a restaurant business. Well, today's your day because Ashley Campos has done all of that. And so we are going to talk with her and just talk about how to grow and some of the things that she's learned from the good and the bad. So Ashley, without further ado, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you for having me on. My name is Ashley Campos, and like Sheree said, I owned a couple businesses, a couple franchise restaurants, notably a Jimmy John's and a Little Caesars, among other things that I do.
Fantastic. As a franchise, how was that starting out?
So we started with Jimmy John's, and I would have to say that I don't think I would have done as good in the restaurant industry if I hadn't started, because I didn't know anything about restaurants. I was a waitress in college, but beyond that, I didn't have a lot of knowledge. So they did a really great job of handing you a book of how to do everything and what to do and what to pay attention to. So I think we definitely had a leg up on that aspect. As we started to learn the business, there was definitely things where as you become a seasoned business owner, seasoned restaurateur, I wish we could do this differently. I would have liked to change things faster. So good in the beginning and then not as good as time went on, because you learn and you know how you might want to do things differently.
Okay, so let's focus on that because now that you know, it's always like when you go on vacation, you go, okay, now we know where to not come, or now we wish we would have, right? So now that you've been through that business, and Jimmy John's, like, as we were talking before, he came and spoke to us. And so he talked about how he was this high school almost dropout. He barely passed. Yeah. And then he didn't want to go to the military. And so he said, well, this is what I'm going to try to do. Borrowed $25,000, I think, from his dad. And then it's an amazing story, I gotta say, for this guy who wasn't going to amount to anything from high school. So my point is, I think it was probably a good franchise to choose. But how did you get started, and how did you know that? And then what would you do differently now?
Why I started at Jimmy John's is because I love their sandwiches when I went to college, and I fell in love with it. I was working for a company which I loved, and I got pregnant, and I'm like, I either need to open a business or I need to look for a new job, just because I was kind of at my ceiling there. There wasn't a lot of growth because it was a smaller company. And my dad was doing some work out in Virginia, and I went to visit him, and he said, oh my gosh, they're starting to open Jimmy John's franchises out here. Do you want to start looking at that? And I drove around the area. I loved it. And boom, we started a franchise like a year later, something that we were kind of thinking of. What would I do different? I would trust my gut a little bit more as I started learning a little bit. Like I said, our Jimmy John's was a phenomenal store. It's a very high earning store. We had awards. We were a training store for other franchisees for a while. So we really operated right. Jimmy John's even has the sandwich masters to see how fast, the fastest sandwich makers, because Jimmy John's freaky fast. My team went and competed one year. They lost, but they went out of one of four out of, I don't know, 3,000 stores, however many they have. What would I do different though? My second franchise, Little Caesars, was a little bit harder for me. We ended up losing it. We couldn't make it profitable. And I just think I would have maybe fought back a little harder on some decisions from a franchise perspective of location, because that's what really caused us to fail. We didn't pick the right location.
It's so interesting because we're working on this house behind me, right? Trying to get it on the market. And so we're far away from home. And so we're like, okay, we're hungry. Let's go to a restaurant. And we're driving, I want Chinese food. So we start driving, and then I look, and there's this Chinese restaurant hidden with all these strip malls, right? You would never have seen it really driving by it unless you're going specifically to it. So we go around the block, we come back, and we pull in, and no joke, sweet and sour chicken. People that know that, they're usually that big, right? These were this big and this big around, huge. And the food was good. Fried rice, not so much, but it was just amazing to see. And nobody, the whole time we were there, not a single person. This is on a Saturday night. And so I asked the lady that owns it, I said, is this a slow night for you? And she's like, well, we get a lot of DoorDash or some other stuff. I said, well, how's business? And so she's like, well, we used to be across the street, which I remember that. and we moved over here. And so I just think, wow, the location is everything because she's been doing this business, I think she said, for over 20 years. How? There's no clients, there's no
Yeah.
activity. And so location really does matter. I'm like, I got to do some commercials for you. I got to do something because it was great food. Nobody knows about her because nobody would have noticed. You just wouldn't have seen it if you're unless you're looking for it.
I think too, even like if you're thinking about the way home from work, if you're a dinner spot and you're on the opposite side, like you have to turn left when
Mhm.
everyone's getting off the expressway versus being on the right hand side and can easily go in. I make a decision where I want to stop if I have to wait at a light and turn left versus right. So even the sides of the street during your like your dinner hour or your breakfast hour, whatever you are, makes a big difference. Starbucks needs to be on the way to the expressway and the other place needs to be on the way to dinner, that kind of thing where most people are coming from.
Very, very true. So with your Little Caesars, what are some hard lessons that you learned?
Oh man, the hardest lesson, and I think that I would say the biggest overarching is stop throwing good money after bad. I wish we would have ripped off the band-aid faster, but it's your baby, it's your pride, and you're trying to make it work and you want to do it. And it was like we wasted thousands, tens of thousands of dollars probably trying to keep it moving and shaking, where the writing was on the wall in the very beginning that it wasn't going to go as well because of the location and we should have just ripped it off. But when you invest that much, you want to keep it going and make it work. But then in the end, we just ended up losing more money because we never made it work. It opened up other opportunities. So I'll never say that I wish we didn't do it. It was just
Right.
an expensive learning lesson.
And I think as a business owner, you have to go through that, right? I went into business with a family member, lost our shirt because of so many things. Like, uh, yeah, that's another episode. But I really do think that because of that, I'm in the position I am now today. I would never have been because I'm like, oh shoot, we got to like hustle because we got to make that money back. And so because of that, that opens so many more doors. And so I think that there's a guy that he talks about how he'll never talk to people unless they've lost their first huge major thing because the lessons you learn are expensive, but so worth it. Would you agree or
I
dis-?
agree.
Okay.
100% agree. Yeah. No, I don't even know where I would be if I wasn't. I might still own my Jimmy John's because we sold it a year ago just because we were ready and we were too busy for it doing other things. Maybe I would own the Jimmy John's still, or maybe I would have went back to like work in corporate America. I don't know what I would have done, but I definitely wouldn't be where I was if it wasn't for that hard lesson for sure.
So what have you learned that now has changed, like where you pivoted and what are you doing today?
Mm. So I think the biggest learning lesson, like I said, is just be more decisive in my decisions and like trusting my gut and making those decisions faster and not trying to save things. If it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck kind of thing. Where am I today? So that Jimmy John's caused, or I'm sorry, that Little Caesars caused me to need a delivery service to try to hustle to get more customers. DoorDash and Uber wasn't a thing where that location was, so I opened my own delivery service.
Oh, wow.
That ended up earning more money per week in the first like 3 months than our Little Caesars did. That ended up causing me to be very busy and need a virtual assistant, which caused me to open a virtual assistant company, which leads me to where I am today of having about 100 people in Colombia and 100 people in the Philippines, being our virtual executive teams, remote teams for different businesses across the United States. So it was a great lesson, but that was like the stages that brought us there. And if it wasn't failing, no delivery service would have started, no virtual assistant business started. So we're in a good spot.
So what kind of delivery service was it?
It was a little local service called City Cheetah. It was the equivalent of a DoorDash or an Uber. It was a marketplace where we would put on the Chinese store that you had sweet and sour chicken from. We put on Little Caesars and all the restaurants in the community, and people could order from. So it was just like a locally owned DoorDash or Uber.
Nice. Are you still doing that then?
No, mm-mm.
I love that you can pivot so quickly. I mean, I'm sure it's not quick. It was a couple of years, but I love that you see a need and you fill it, and you see another
Yeah.
need and you fill it. Or you're like, you know what, I want to try this. Because how much did it cost for you to um acquire the franchise? And maybe if you don't want to share that, how did you get the money to open the franchise?
It's a lot. I mean, you can imagine how much construction and hood and all that stuff. Plus franchise fees range, I don't know for all of them, but 20 to 60 grand for all these different franchise fees. How did we get the money? 401ks and stuff like that we took money out of to put in. So we're building that back up, like full disclosure, because we took that to do build outs for a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was 100% private, your money.
Loans, no loans, like a combination of loans that we had to pay back. So still our money, just our money later and with interest.
Would you recommend trying to get some private money investors today, or would you do the same way you did?
I'd probably do it the same way I did. I feel like when you get investors, then you have to answer to them, which if you have an investor who has, say, if you're doing a successful restaurant business and you're getting kind of a partner in that, I think that's a good option. But if you're just getting money from somebody and you have to answer to them and they don't understand and can't be like a coach for you, then I wouldn't mess with that. I would start small. And the thing I think about restaurants in particular, I loved being in my Jimmy John's every day when we first owned it. I was there at 5, like opening to close, and I loved it and it was great. I would say that if you don't think that you want to do that, because if you're like having kids and you don't want to do that your whole life, then you need to have a plan where you're having at least 3 restaurants so that you can afford to hire somebody to run the restaurants for you and you don't have to be in there the day to day. Because if everyone called out or there was a snowstorm and we still had to open, like who's going in? I'm going in, or my husband's going in, or my kids were going in to like help out and do things. So that's one thing I would probably try to do differently, is to at least have a couple faster. Like if I was going for money, that would almost be something like, I know that in the next 5 years or 3 years, I want 3 or 5 locations.
That's interesting because that's what Jimmy Jones said in the interview that I saw him in. He's like, if you don't plan to be there 24/7, and I mean 24/7, then don't open this restaurant because it's going to take that much time and effort. And
100%. 100%.
yeah, I think I've seen that, not experienced it. I do that with my own real estate stuff. But anyway, so now you're starting and you have a VA company, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you help businesses grow, and what do you provide?
So our VA company provides virtual teams primarily with marketing, customer service, and then executive assistance. So if you needed a VA or a team of VAs to help you, we could do that. But kind of all the omni-channel stuff. When I started looking for a VA, what I thought was missing is they were more BPO companies, like business process outsource, very transactional. I wanted my VA to be a part of my business. Yes, you help me hire them, but I almost we're more like a virtual staffing company that we manage the people for you, but I want them to be in your business. If you have certain lingo that you use, I want them living and breathing that lingo. I want them to drink the juice of whatever that business is, to be fully engulfed in it. And I just think that's important, especially being an entrepreneur. That's your baby. You love it. I don't want to be told how I have to run my business by a VA, or I can only work in these confines. I want it to be more fluid for that.
So what do you recommend? Because say that I'm like, okay, I'm floundering and like I'm getting this house on the market and listing, so I get to come here and make sure everything's getting done when I hire people, right? So I don't have as much time to be doing the stuff that I was doing. So yeah, I need a VA, right? So if you were to talk to somebody like me, we'll just say I'm hypothetical. What questions should a business owner ask to know if it's a good fit?
To ask the VA,
Yeah.
so there's two sets of questions. I think I'll go from my side first, and then I'll go from your side to me. From my side, I want to know your personality, and I think a VA company should be really worried about how the two people get along, because let's be real, you don't get along. You don't like working with every types of personality. I can't stand explaining things for a very long time to somebody. I want to give a small explanation. You try it, and then I'll fix and I'll teach you why it was wrong. I can't give a step-by-step direction. not for me. But that's important because there are other people that want to give this long explanation before they feel comfortable handing it over. So kind of on both sides, I'd be asking about personality, and kind of as a new entrepreneur trying to use a VA, it's almost you need to ask self questions first. Am I comfortable being vulnerable, of telling somebody my weaknesses and like being open about that? Because you just build relationships faster. I say to people to like look at what is on the bottom of your to-do list every day or every week that keeps getting pushed. That's not important enough for you to do it, so hand it off. And telling people too, it's a slow process to build trust, to be able to hand over everything, but just start. And then it's kind of addicting because you're like, I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. They can help me, especially once you build that trust. And it's so exciting because they're almost an extension because they know how you think. What should you be looking for as a person choosing a VA company? I would ask about contracts. Like, is there a long-term contract? And what happens if that person doesn't fit with you? What's the process? Nothing worse than spending 2 weeks kind of trying to train somebody and then they don't work out. And then you've just paid for all that time. And then you have to pay for it again with someone new. So that's kind of not fair. Just I would ask about that. And then I would ask the VA, or be honestly, like ask yourself so you could tell the VA, like, what's your communication style? So many of us want to like be helpful to the VA. Like, what do you need me to do for you? No, they need to help you and they need to communicate with you in the best way for you. Don't email me. I'm terrible at emailing. But if you slacked me a question and then I tell you it's okay to bother me because I haven't gotten back to you, please do that, versus letting it sit and people feel like, oh, I don't want to bother you. So just being open. It's like more of a self-discovery because it's virtual too. And I think people have a harder time when you can't physically see somebody working. You're like, oh, they're watching TV or they're doing other things because you can't see what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the productivity speaks for itself. If you're giving them stuff to do,
right.
Like with the one that I had, the amount of work she was able to accomplish way faster than what I could have done because that's what she was doing every day. I was like trying to juggle 20 balls. And so that's what she was doing. So yeah, it is a fine line, but they are so helpful. How much should you expect to pay for a VA?
Depends. You can go to some areas and pay $5 or $6 an hour for a VA. That could be a general data entry VA, most likely from the Philippines, some places in South America too. And you can pay upwards of $15 an hour for a VA, depending on like skill set. Even $20 I've seen for teams that have like managers on them. Like some of our customer service teams have managers that manage the people underneath, like even 2 or 3 layers, because there's just that many people built up in there. So somewhere in between there, but by skill set. And, someone might say, Ashley, if I'm paying $12 an hour, $15 an hour here, like, or there, why should I outsource it? Why shouldn't I just find someone here? Well, you might be paying $15 an hour there, but you're getting somebody that might have their master's or might have at least a college education with experience, that type of thing. So it might be the same price, but more level of experience. We hire so many people that I'm like, gosh, you're so smart. Like you're so much smarter than me because they have all this education.
Mm-hmm. Don't discount yourself. You got your master's degree. You're definitely worth it. Okay. And so what would be the process to be able to get that going? Is it a long process or is it pretty quick?
Usually it's pretty quick. I mean, for us, it's pretty quick. I think for the companies that I interviewed with when we were working with them, it was like 2 weeks, a week. For us, it's probably about the same. Depends on what people are looking for. Because like for our company, you can have 5 hours a week, or you can get a full-time person for 40 hours a week. So, and all of our VAs are all employees. So it's not just an independent contractor. So we source them. We have a lineup of people kind of waiting. We have some people that have partial projects that we move around. So it kind of just depends on what the need is and the personality for us, because we super focus on personality of making sure that it's a pretty good fit.
So how do you find your clients?
Word of mouth, usually. We haven't started advertising. I really want to. I want to try to do some pay-per-click ads, but we just haven't had to. We hadn't needed to. And I feel like we're finally in a way where we have some systems that we can do some of that. But we needed to. So we had it now, but it's the right time.
Okay, so I've heard throughout this interview you talk about we. So how many are you in a partnership? Is it a group of you? What is your business structure like?
Um, I mean, our COO down in Colombia, she heads up everything, or my COO in the Philippines. We, as in the team of just people who run it and who do it day to day.
And how do you, because obviously you're scaling because you're getting more clients and you have more employees under you. So how have you found that person? Because I hear so many times with entrepreneurs, I don't trust. Like it's
Mhm.
only going to be me. They're solopreneurs because they can't trust anybody. And so how did you find your COOs in the Philippines and South America?
So my COO in the Philippines was my first VA
Oh,
that I liked, that I stuck with. And we had people who, when I was telling them about VAs, and I was like, here's what I'm doing. And other people were asking, can you do that for me? Or how can I do that? And I asked her if we could. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's start our own company. And I know people, I could hire them. And so that's how we started there. My COO in Colombia was actually an au pair of mine who came up and spent time with us, and just we built a relationship. She watched me build City Cheetah, watched me do all this stuff, and in that delivery tech space was a lot of where our clients came from. So she kind of knew it inside and out. And when she went back, she wanted to start something down there, and ended up starting it and then just growing it from there. So I've been lucky with, it's not like I had to just close my eyes and pick a person out of the country. I was able to develop relationships before we got in bed together and opened a business.
but that's the key is developing the relationship. So how did you, obviously you trust her because she was your au pair and you trust her because she was your VA. Do you ever um, get worried about things at all? Because
Oh, always, always. But I travel a lot. And so I'm involved.
okay.
And so that helps, when you could go and see and talk and see what's going on and be there. And it gives me an excuse to travel. That's why I love it the most. It's like, oh, I need to go.
And it's a super tax write-off. It's so true.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But it is, it's work. All right,
Yeah.
so let's shift for a minute and let's talk about mom because you have 3 kids, right?
Yes.
So building a business, especially as demanding as it was, how did you juggle that while having kids?
Yeah, it's been, my husband, I'll have to say he was a huge help. We're partners in life and partners in all this. So I think that has helped, and just setting, he's super supportive of everything that I do, even when he thinks I'm crazy some of these times. And I'm like, let's do it. So that helped. We live in Virginia and our family is from Chicago. So that was probably the hardest part, is that we didn't have a huge support system out here. His sister came and helped us for a little while, but it's just about not stopping life and making sure that you could just take the hard decisions to keep it moving. And I know it sounds cliche, but I don't know. We just did. If we had to, we made it work and we figured out a way. And there's no specific situation like where it's hard to get the kids. When we had the Jimmy Johns is when we got the au pair. And it was so hard for us with our schedules, to get the kids to a daycare that opened at the right time. So my dad was like, hey, some guy at work uses an au pair. And I'm like, what's this? What does that even mean? And people think that it's fancy and you have to be rich to use an au pair. It was cheaper for us to get an au pair than it was to put the kids in daycare, the two. And we were planning on having a third. And at that point, it was like we saved money by getting an au pair. Like we could get an au pair and then still have money to buy a third car, to have like a car payment. And it was still cheaper than school. So just being okay, like open to opportunities and just saying, yeah, or let's try it out, not being scared to make those changes. We're always changing. I think that's like the only thing consistent, is that we're always changing.
Mhm. No, that's true. So if you were sitting on a park bench and 19-year-old first-time mom came and sat next to you, what unsolicited advice would you give that person?
That's a good one. I would tell her to raise her child in a way that allows her to continue living her life, and don't change your life around that child having the best life, but let that child integrate into your life as much as possible so you don't lose yourself and you can still continue moving. And I think moms are so scared that they have to be a certain way and it has to work like this, but it's not. It's fine. Like I have fantastic kids, and like my husband and I said, we went out to dinner and we're like, we don't want to stop going out to dinner just because we have kids. So we didn't. And we taught the kids how to in a restaurant, and now they like to go out to eat more than we like to go out to eat, but like just kind of letting them, building that around that foundation where you can still live your life and everything will be okay. Everything will be fine, Oh, and I have one more piece. I want one more piece because I like this one too. My dad told me once that if you're worried about it, you're probably doing a good job. So moms sit and they worry about everything all the time. And like, oh my God, my kid, they're going to do this or that. Well, he's like, you're worrying about it. So that means you're thinking about it and you're going to make it okay. And that's like the greatest foundation ever is and just be happy that you're doing that. Because some people might not worry about certain things.
So true. I needed that today. I love that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That is going to be my motto for this week.
It's true in life. It's like true for everything. He's like, the fact that you're thinking about it means you're actively trying to solve the problem. So you're doing better than what you think. Give yourself grace.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. Well, if our listeners wanted to find you and maybe they think, yeah, I do need to hire a VA, how would they find you?
Sure. They could head to our website. It is GCS Global Connect Solutions. It's gcshelps.com.
Nice. Thank you so much, Ashley, for coming on.
Thank you. Of course, this was fun.
And moms and entrepreneurs, just take action. Do what you feel like you need to. And remember, if you're thinking about it, then you're probably doing a good job. Go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.